Welcome to this week's session of Fridays on the Farm. Today we're going to wrap up our bull selection series and talk about our visual appraisal and what we look for as we're actually picking out our bulls. As we start out with our visual and breeding soundness exams to try to pick out the right bull for your herd, there are a few things that we start with. It's important that we look at the conformation. How sound are these calves? What kind of disposition do they have? And that we take the time to have a breeding soundness exam completed. As we start looking at conformation, there's lots of factors we need to take into consideration. Let's get started with muscling. Thickness or muscling is really important in beef cattle because muscle is what's sold in the retail case. The degree of muscling is going to impact not only your yield grades, your average daily gains, and your dressing percentages. Lightly muscled cattle are going to be significantly discounted at the sale time. Muscling for your herd can be improved through bull selection. There's several good indicators of muscling in beef cattle. Let's look at figure 1. Muscling can be evaluated in the quarter of the round, the stifle, the gaskin, the twist, the shoulder, the forearm, and across and along the back. Don't just look at one area to determine muscling. It's important that we look that they're thick through their quarter and that they have adequate muscling through their forearm. Their forearm is an excellent example to look at for muscling because there's usually less fat cover in that area. The next factor we want to take into consideration in conformation is their sex character. We want our bulls to look like bulls. Masculinity is important. They should be powerful in their appearance, display a prominent crest, seem heavier in muscle and bone than their female counterparts. It should be easy also to distinguish your bull from the set of his head. It's also important to select bulls that have adequate body capacity or volume. That body capacity is assessed by looking at their spring of their rib, their width of their chest floor, length of body, and depth of body. If we plan on keeping replacement heifers that this bull sired, it's important that those heifers have the ample body volume for carrying and delivering a calf in a large rumen so they can consume more and thus produce more milk. Also, as you think about what your goals are, think about what bull fits those needs. For example, this guy is a lot smaller in the front, which would make him a better option for heifers. He's going to throw that smaller frame front end onto those calves, so you're less likely to have to pull calves if he was the sire to heifers. Some bulls also have a predisposition to be wastier than other cattle. Excessively fat bulls sometimes lack that libido. Bulls displaying large amounts of loose hide in their dewlap or excessive depth of flank and loose hide in the twist may also be predisposed to be wasty. This may exhibit a patchy and really uneven finish, which we don't want to pass along to its calves. A well-balanced bull is going to be stylish, eye-catching, and attractive, which will help capture favorable interest from those potential buyers. Balance implies the correctness of structure and a desirable blending of proportion of body parts. The neck should bleed smoothly into the shoulder, a level top line should be exhibited, bunchy coarse muscling should not be present. If a bull was heavy on the front and light on the back, we would call him unbalanced. As we look at this bull, he's got the smoothness that comes up, the neck extension, he's balanced. Structural soundness is really important in a beef sire to ensure that a herd sire is physically capable of effectively breeding those females in your herd. A breeding bull will need sound feet, legs, and eyes in order to seek out and find the females that are in heat and service them. Structurally sound bulls will walk freely, they'll take long strides, and will display flex and give in the joints. That's one of the reasons it's really important to watch these calves walk. You might observe a possible defect that could impair their ease of movement and cause undue stress on the joints. We want to view the cattle from as many angles as possible when you're trying to assess his conformation and structural soundness. The legs of a structurally correct bull should be placed squarely in the four corners of his body. Bones should be straight and strong, and the proper amount of set or angle in the shoulder, hock, and pasterns for ample cushioning. A steep shoulder, so if it's too straight, is a good indicator of potential leg problems. A bull that is buck-kneed in his front legs will also have excessive stress on his shoulder. A bull that is calf-kneed in his front legs might have excessive stress on his knees. An animal that's post-legged in its rear legs, it's not enough set to the hock, may become stifled and have difficulty mounting those female cows. This condition is more serious than a sickle hocked, where there's too much set in those hind legs. Cattle may be too toed out or cow-hocked, which are also two additional structural problems. A narrow stance in the rear legs might also affect their length of stride. Hip structure could also affect how freely an animal is able to move. Cattle should be level from their hooks, which is their hips, to their pens. Too much slope there is also considered undesirable. You want to watch these guys move. Make sure they can move soundly. This bull calf has a really long stride. It's important they can walk soundly, that way they can cover ground and do their jobs. The next factor we want to look at are some of the other visual cues to help us make the right selection for our herd. Think back to the first session when we talked quite a bit about what are your herd goals. When you talk about coat color, there's lots of different options. Some of it goes back to what your preference are. Some colors are going to be docked more at the sale barn as well. So make sure that when you're selecting that color of your bull, you're also considering what color calves he's going to throw and how that's going to meet your goal. For example, the gene for black is going to be dominant over the gene for red. So if you prefer red calves, it's important that you keep that in consideration, and a black bull might not be your best choice. On the flip side, if you really want to raise black calves, having a black bull could be really important to you. The next factor you want to look at is he polled or horned? In most British influenced cattle, polled is considered the dominant gene. So if your bull is polled, there's a higher chance your calves are going to be polled. Horned calves are going to be heavily discounted at the sale barn. So by taking time to pick out a bull that's polled, that's going to throw polled calves, that's going to either save you dollars at the sale, or it's going to save you time and not having to take the time to dehorn those calves. Unless, if that bull has a Brahmin influence, there is an African horn gene that can sometimes show out, and those calves that have that Brahmin influence may be more likely to have horns, even if the bull was polled on the front end. Scurs are another factor that some people don't always think of. Scurs are actually developed from a different gene than the gene for horns. So it doesn't have any effect on whether or not there's actually horns there. Not all horned cattle carry the genetics for the scur expression, but not all polled cattle lack it either. It's also important to take time to check the bull's sheath. Sheaths that are looser or pendulous might be more prone to injury than a tighter sheath that's tucked in. Scrotal circumference is one of the things we're also going to check when we do our breeding soundness exam, but we always want to evaluate it because his scrotal circumference is very indicative of his sperm producing capacity. So that's one of the things we want to check as well. When we talk about disposition, you also have to think about your herd goals. What kind of working facilities do you have? Do you have people working your cattle that need something around that's safer? On the other hand, gentle cattle sometimes can be a bigger pain to work because they're not in a hurry to get out of the way. As you handle these bulls, look and see what they have. Is he a bull that you've got to worry about having to jump the fence from? Or like this group of cattle, they've been handled, they've been around people, they're not really worried about us. Their biggest concern is where their feed bucket is. The breeding soundness exam is really important whether you're buying a virgin bull or a proven bull. The breeding soundness exam is just identifying what that bull's breeding potential is. Is he fertile? Is he sound? These are all really important. You want to conduct these about 60 days prior to the breeding season. We also recommend you do this annually. Even if it's a bull that you've had at your own place on your own cows before, it's important that we check to make sure he can still do his job effectively. During the bull test, your veterinarian is going to conduct a physical exam. He's going to take that scrotal circumference measurement, and they're also going to do a semen evaluation. Today, we're excited to be able to share a video of Dr. Aaron Wilburn from Providence Veterinary Care, who partnered with us to show us an example of a breeding soundness exam.
Hi, I'm Dr. Aaron Wilburn from Providence Veterinary Care, and we are here today to do a bull breeding soundness exam on Corona. Okay. So first I'm just going to check his accessory sex organs. Make sure nothing feels swollen, infected, abnormal in any way. Looking at his back feet too while I'm back here. It doesn't matter if he's fertile or not. If he get up to do the job. Everything feels good. Alright, use that tape. Picking a scrotal circumference, there's a minimum circumference that they have to have. And some of that depends on how old they are, but if they don't meet that minimum requirement, then they're not going to pass the exam. He's 38, so that's great. And we check his front feet and his eyes as well, just to make sure that everything's clear and looking good and able for, or allowing him to be able to do his job. This is our electroejaculator probe. We put this into the bull's rectum with the electrical current facing his prostate. Now you just hold it and you can touch this. Just hold this in. Ready? Alright, and that's just going to stimulate his prostate and hopefully get us a semen sample for me to evaluate. He might kick his feet and dance a little bit, just watching his haunch out for his legs. And I'm not only hoping he gives me a sample, but I'm also hoping he actually drops his penis to where I can see it, make sure it looks okay, make sure there's not any hair rings or anything that I can clear off of it. Just make sure everything looks like it's able to function appropriately. You will see clear fluid produced. That's mostly just pre-ejaculatory fluid, urine. Everything looks good. And there it's cloudy. He's giving us a little bit of a sample, also mixed with urine. Just hold him there for a second. I'm going to look at this under the microscope. There's quite a bit of urine, but I do think there's quite a bit of semen in there too. So it might be a little contaminated of a sample, but hopefully we still have some good swimmers in there. And things that I'm evaluating under the microscope are going to be the motility of the sperm and also the morphology, what kind of abnormalities do they have, and the types of abnormalities that they have will tell me if it's something related to just being stored in the testicle for too long, or if it's actually the bull not able to make semen appropriately, or individual sperm, I should say. And even being very contaminated with urine, this looks pretty good. So urine has a pH that isn't compatible with semen, so it can actually kill your sperm off pretty quickly if there's too much urine in a sample. So I like to get a clean sample with no urine, but it's not the end of the world. If the sample looks like this with contamination, I'm pretty happy. This would pass even without contamination.
At the end of the day, it comes down to what are your goals. When you start selecting a bull, there's lots of criteria we need to take the time to consider that we've covered in the last 3 sessions of Fridays on the Farm. But make sure you know what your goals are and you're selecting the right sire that's going to help you meet your goals. If you need more information or you're still trying to make up your mind, feel free to give us a call at the office. We'd love to help you. You can also check out our website You can look at the Bull Selection and Management Guide, that's MP 502. There's also Fact Sheet 3075 that covers sire selection, and our breeding genetics section of the Extension website. Thank you for joining us for this week's session